there we go. You guys should be able to see that. Eric, can you confirm you got Excel on your screen?
Yep, we can see it.
All right, beautiful. So what I have here is Excel open. Our plugin, the Cirro Analyst plugin, lives here in the Data tab of Excel. One of the things I might want to do is go ahead and click the Data Explorer. And I know I have some Twitter data, so I can navigate here and find some Twitter data. And in that case, I have it under User. Let's see here, User. Oh, there it is, under Twitter. And then here in CA Test. So I can say Go to Cirro Function. And now I've brought up our function wizard. And here I'm now able to say, okay, we have all kinds of functions, the types of things you would expect to see for an analyst type tool. In this case, what I want to do is a source parser. And I click OK. And I'm going to use a Twitter parse. And in that case, then, I'm going to go ahead and pick some columns. So now that it's parsed, I can pick things like the raw 140-character tweet and when it was created, which are the only two things I need for this particular use case. If I want to get a sample of this data, I can click on the function wizard and go over to Output. And I'm going to put some output onto the sheet. And I'm going to use the Twitter parse as the input, so I'm just using Excel references like you would normally do. And then I can put some of the sample data. I'll put some sample data right here. Click OK, and then click Refresh, and I get a sample of that data. So here's the raw Twitter data. I apologize if there's anything nasty in there, but you know it is raw Twitter data. And then also, this is when it's created. So I see I have hours and minutes, and I want to count tweets by the hour, so I'll need to clean that up a little bit. So I'll do a couple things here. Go back to my function wizard, and I'm going to do a text function just to make it easy to work with the data, and I'm going to go ahead and lowercase it. So we have a to-lower function here, and I'm going to use the Twitter parse as the input, and I'm going to apply that to the tweet text. I also saw that I wanted to do something with the date. I wanted to round the hour on that, so I'll find a date function for that. As you can imagine, with analytics, we have all kinds of date functions. In this case, I just want to go ahead and round the hour. I'll use the previous cell as the input, and I'm going to apply that to the created at. The other thing that I may want to do, since I want to count words, is I have another text function that separates words, because words get smushed together in things like Twitter. So I have a word separate, and I'll just use the previous cell as the input, and go ahead and apply that to the tweet text. And then finally, a couple other things. I want to do an aggregation, so we'll do the count to count our tweets by the hour, and we'll use the previous cell for the input. And I'm going to count by the individual words in the tweet text and when they were created. And then I'll also want to do a join. So I want to bounce that off against this table I have with the names that I'm interested in. So in that case, we have all kinds of ways to join the data. In this case, it's a match. And I'm going to use the data from the count, and I'm going to join on the individual words in the tweet text. And I'm going to join that to a MySQL table, where I have in the inventory database a table that has the names of the companies that I'm interested in. That table has only one column, which is the name. And so I say OK. And then the last thing I want to do is probably do something with the output. So in that case, I can just say, I'm going to go ahead and create maybe a pivot table. I'll use the data from the join, and I'll put the pivot table right here, and click OK. At that point, I can refresh things, and I'll get my data back. So it's running the join, and then we'll bring it back. So we have our data back. Here's the count that we created. This is when it was created, and this is the name from the MySQL database. So in this simple example, these are the companies that I have. I'm counting across the last 2 hours of the 9th of September and the first 2 hours of the 10th of September from this Twitter sample data that I have. And for those companies, these are the tweet counts that they have. Now, to point out a couple things about this, what I've shown here then is the ability to create this query and do a mashup here without worrying about where things are executing or whether I was writing something in Hive or whether it was in MapReduce or SQL or any of those things. I didn't worry about data movement. All of this happened for me by the Data Hub. These are truly Excel functions. If I click on the Excel function button, it all comes up with help and everything, and these are true Excel functions. So if you know how to use functions, you can use this. Again, with the sample, I showed you the ability to get a sample of this data as you're working with it. Typically, users, as they work with these different functions, will resample their data to see how that data changes. Now that I have this particular analysis done, if I wanted to make this available for other people to use, I could simply publish this. And to do that, I would just click on Publish. I would pick one cell to publish, which is the data from that join, and I can give it a name. So in this case, I'll give it a name of Bloor and say OK. And it published that view successfully. So if I go back to my Data Explorer, I can go to our Cirro Hub, and I can look in our library under Cirro Views, and I'll see I created a new view called Bloor, and that view has 4 columns associated with it. So when you're accessing this with a BI tool like Business Objects or a data visualization tool like Tableau or something like that, they'll see this view, and that view will have these columns associated with it, and those are, you know, has all the typical metadata that you would expect when working with